Thank you, Vladika. My question, you mentioned secularism is basically one of the main issues in modern life. Obviously people turning away from God in droves, and particularly in the countries with established churches like England. So how can we basically deal with this? What do we need to do?
Secularism, the root of the word seculum in Latin means time or an age. And secularism is fundamentally being rooted in the things of this moment, the things of this age. And the way to combat secularism is to consciously be rooted in the things of eternity, right? The things of this moment are what completely govern the societies around us, which is why we call it secular society. It's not in and of itself a bad word, but we, as Christians, we normally think of it in negative terms, because a society that becomes so focused on just what's happening now, what we think now, what we understand now, is all focused on itself, focused on its own self-definition, and not on the eternal truths that abide, irrespective of what's happening in the given moment. And so we're living in a generation where secular thought has reached a pitch that even, I can't even say a generation ago, even in our own generation, 10, 15 years ago, the sorts of things that are said now, as if they were factual things about sexuality, morality, identity, all of these things, would have been completely inconceivable to us 10 or 15 years ago. But because society preaches the moment as if it were truth and the substance of truth, we now live in a world where people are willing to believe as true things that are obviously not true in many different arenas of thought. And the only way to combat this is to be grounded in a reality that goes beyond it. That's why we have to listen to the church, to God, to the fathers. We have to receive a vision of the world that is different, right? And follow that. In terms of your question, how do we combat what's going on around us? Again, it takes a lot of courage. I find particularly amongst young people today, there is a sort of split personality disorder in courage. I think there are a lot of young people and older people as well, but I speak of the generation coming in with gusto and enthusiasm and all of this. And I find that there are a lot of them who I believe probably if they were forced at gunpoint or knife point to renounce Christ, would martyrically stand up and be martyred rather than do this. There is a zeal and a bravery in this regard that I believe is sincere and real. But if you ask those same people to give up their Facebook account or their Instagram because it is demonstrably damaging their spiritual life, because it is demonstrably causing them to suffer, I doubt they would have the courage to do that. It's a strange thing when the sword is less frightening than our internet connection. And so I worry for a generation that doesn't have the courage to fight the fights that really need fighting. I mean, if and when you are put in a place where you are being directly persecuted, and it might happen, it's happening to some of our brothers and sisters at this very moment, where they're being forced to make the choice between faith and death. And if, God forbid, you, or maybe God be glorified, ever find yourself there, then may God give you the courage to stand nobly. But the spiritual fight that you're fighting right now, in this moment, is not that one. It is a fight against the powers of this age that seek to control and dominate and influence you. And I'm afraid to say that too often, too many of you give in to this, freely give in to this. I sometimes talk with various groups, adults, youth, even children, And when I propose the idea of giving up social media, it's almost always met by laughter, as if I've said, you might as well move to the moon. We could never do that. Yes, you can. You just don't want to. It's easy. Turn it off. It's not quite that easy. I was on Facebook for a time, and I decided at last that I had had enough. And it's not an easy thing to delete. It takes about a month because you have to say delete, and then are you really sure? Aren't you worried that your life will end dramatically? And you say, no, I really want to do this. And then they make you wait a month before they will actually delete your account. But it can be done, right? And so you have to test your sincerity a little bit. If you really want to fight this age, then you have to make the choice to stop enslaving yourself to it. And if you're not willing to do that, then you can't moan too much when you suffer the consequences. And you can't blame other people for something that you are contributing to. The reason social media continues to have its hold on people is because people use it. Stop using it, and it won't have its control over you. And if enough people do this, it will cease to have its grip on society. And I'm not just picking on that, I'm picking on other things as well that similarly have a kind of grasp on us. You have to have the courage to say enough. Enough.